In 2025, something unsettling is happening. Some of America's closest allies are quietly turning away, their footsteps fading from U.S. soil like shadows at dusk. This isn't a fleeting crisis. It's a profound shift shaking the very foundations of America's global standing. Across the northern border, Canada, once the most reliable source of tourism, has slammed its gates shut in silence. Nearly 1 million fewer Canadians crossed into the U.S. in a single month. A drop so steep it drags the flow of visitors back to pandemic-era lows. Flights are grounded, with bookings down over 70%, and airlines slashing hundreds of thousands of seats bound for America. Even duty-free shops at the border see their sales collapse by half. Why? Because political barbs have turned into walls, tariffs renewed, insults flung about turning Canada into America's 51st state. Those words didn't just sting. They ignited resentment, fear, and distrust. Canada's official advisories now warn travelers to brace for invasive border searches, devices seized without cause, all beneath the cold gaze of tightened security. Canadians are voting with their wallets, canceling trips, avoiding states they once visited with open arms. If this continues, America could lose $9 billion in tourism revenue from its closest neighbor alone. A staggering hit that would echo through every hotel lobby, shop, and town, depending on the steady flow of visitors. This is no mere loss of tourists. It's the erosion of trust, the fraying of an ancient friendship. But the chill has crossed the Atlantic, and France is feeling the frost. Once enchanted by American dreams, the cinema, the spirit of freedom, French travelers are now hesitating at the edge. Bookings to the U.S. have plummeted by 20%, a drop unlike anything in decades. Industry leaders are stunned. Jean-François Réal, a veteran luxury tour operator, calls it unprecedented. The catalyst? A French space researcher denied entry over unauthorized sensitive data, an incident that sparked outrage and suspicion. French media portray it as political retaliation for private criticisms of the U.S. president. Academic and cultural bridges that once seemed unshakable now tremble under this strain. Safety fears, border detentions, and new political barriers push French travelers to reconsider their destinations. Influencers and travel groups quietly rally behind a boycott, steering tourists toward countries that offer stability and welcome rather than suspicion and risk. For many in France, America no longer feels like the land of freedom. It's become unpredictable, even hostile. When a nation so entwined with American ideals recoils, it's a sign of a deeper, more personal fracture. Germany, long a steadfast ally, adds to the warning. In March 2025, German arrivals to the U.S. nosedived by over 28%, the sharpest decline across Europe. This isn't coincidence. It's the fallout of political tensions and an increasingly hostile border environment. The German Foreign Office quietly warns citizens that even with valid visas, they risk detention, interrogation, or outright refusal at the border. Several high-profile cases of Germans, clean records in hand, turned away with no explanation, have sparked outrage. The message is clear. Welcome on paper, but not always in practice. German media openly question whether the U.S. remains a safe, ethical destination. Economic retaliation through tariffs only deepens the growing divide. What was once a reliable partnership now trembles on the edge of collapse. This is not a momentary stumble or a passing frustration. It's a seismic rupture of trust, a quiet boycott spreading beneath the surface but threatening to roar. The world's closest allies are pulling back, their doubts and fears cutting deeper than any tariff or headline. Tourism dollars evaporate, cultural exchanges falter, and decades of diplomatic goodwill unravel thread by thread. America stands at a crossroads. Recognize this silent withdrawal and act, or risk watching an irreversible fracture turn into a permanent exile. 2025 may well be remembered as the year the world turned its back on America. Not with the crash of a bomb, but the hush of a door closing. Tour groups that once flocked to the United States are now rerouting their journeys to Asia, while families increasingly favor the sun-soaked coasts and rich cultures of Southern Europe. Even countries historically seen as staunch allies of America are quietly pulling back, signaling a subtle yet significant shift in global travel patterns and international perceptions. This evolving landscape is a warning signal, especially as nations like Germany, once deeply connected to the U.S., begin to reduce their travel engagement. The stakes grow higher when even America's closest cultural allies start to reconsider their relationship. Take the United Kingdom, for example. For decades, British travelers considered the United States their natural go-to destination, a place that felt familiar, exciting, and culturally aligned. But in 2025, that strong bond appears to be quietly fraying. Airlines such as Virgin Atlantic have already reduced the number of transatlantic flights, responding directly to a noticeable drop in demand. Travel agencies are reporting a slowdown in bookings, paired with a growing hesitation that goes beyond just rising costs.
The core issue is a deeper discomfort and frustration with how British citizens are treated at U.S. borders. One particularly damaging incident involved a young British tourist detained for 19 days due to a visa misunderstanding. The situation escalated to the point where the traveler was deported under heavy restraint, leg irons, waist chains, and handcuffs. Although the case was eventually resolved, the damage to public trust was profound. The incident sparked outrage in the UK Parliament and ignited a broader national conversation about the treatment of UK nationals abroad. Online travel forums that were once filled with friendly itinerary advice have transformed into spaces warning travelers about increased scrutiny, unexpected detentions, and the precarious consequences of minor visa infractions. In response, many British tourists are now opting for destinations that feel safer, simpler, and less politically charged. Places where they won't have to worry about facing hostile or confusing treatment. This withdrawal by the UK, America's closest cultural ally, is more than symbolic. It's a clear sign that even the oldest and strongest international relationships are beginning to strain under pressure. But while the West's traditional alliances seem to wobble, a quieter, equally significant shift is underway across the Pacific. Australia, which has long regarded the United States as a favored destination for tourism, study, and business opportunities, is showing signs of serious strain in 2025. The U.S. International Trade Administration reports that Australian visitor numbers fell by 7% in March, the steepest monthly decline since the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. This isn't simply a matter of price hikes or economic fluctuations. Reports have emerged of Australian travelers being denied entry, detained, or subjected to invasive searches of their personal devices at the border. The Australian government's Smart Traveller Advisory now cautions citizens to carefully understand visa terms and warns that entry to the U.S. is never guaranteed, even with the appropriate documentation. This advisory reflects a growing sense of discomfort and frustration. As one travel industry executive put it, "We're hearing more and more people from Australia and Europe saying they simply don't want to deal with U.S. passport control anymore." This hesitancy is already hitting the bottom line. Flight Centre, one of Australia's largest travel firms, is bracing for a $100 million revenue loss directly linked to the slump in U.S.-bound travel. When long-haul travelers start bypassing the U.S. altogether, it's no longer just about policies or politics. It becomes deeply personal. But the reluctance to travel to the U.S. isn't isolated to the Pacific region. It's becoming evident right in the heart of Europe as well. Spain, a country that has historically been a significant source of long-haul tourists to the United States, is witnessing a notable shift in 2025. Spanish families dreaming of Florida's beaches, couples longing for New York's iconic skylines, and students seeking the American dream have begun reconsidering their plans. Travel agencies across Spain report a drop in bookings for U.S. trips, with nearly 40% noting declines that are described as significant for the travel season. Instead, more travelers are opting for alternatives like Canada, Egypt, or parts of Latin America. These choices are supported by data from the International Trade Administration, which highlights a 24.5% year-over-year decrease in air arrivals from Spain to the U.S. in March 2025, a loss of almost 20,000 travelers compared to the previous year. Spanish tour operators are raising alarms, citing growing airport screening anxiety and a broader disillusionment with the political climate in the U.S. This trend is not just about leisure travel. It signals a fraying of diplomatic and cultural relations. When tourists choose to cancel trips not because of cost but on principle, it's a clear indication that something deeper and more systemic is at play. Spain, known worldwide for its vibrant culture, fiestas, and spirited travelers, stepping back quietly signals that America's image crisis has taken on a global dimension. If Spain's retreat sends a serious message, Denmark's response in 2025 is a loud and unmistakable statement. Despite its small size, Denmark has seen a dramatic 34.5% drop in air travel to the United States in March, compared to the same period last year, one of the sharpest declines across Europe. But the issue is not merely financial or logistical. A grassroots boycott movement has gained significant momentum, with over 95,000 Danes actively encouraging fellow citizens to avoid American-made goods and cancel travel plans to the U.S. This movement isn't born from anti-American sentiment, but rather as a reaction to the actions of the U.S. government. One striking example involved a Danish retiree who contacted a chocolate company to inquire about the origin of almonds used in their products. Upon learning the almonds came from California, she shared the information online and added the chocolate to her boycott list. Her message was simple and direct.
If it's American, it doesn't go in the shopping basket. Frustrations escalated further after U.S. officials publicly criticized Denmark's governance of Greenland, an autonomous territory deeply tied to Danish identity.
Many Danes felt that moment crossed a line.
Today, tourists are staying home. Supermarkets are labeling European products with black stars, and American businesses are quietly grappling with the financial fallout of a boycott that shows no signs of slowing down.
Denmark may be small, but its message is echoing far beyond its borders.
So what does all this mean for the United States? Is this simply a temporary dip in tourism numbers, or does it represent a more profound global reckoning?
From Canada to Spain, from the UK to Australia and Denmark, people are not just canceling trips. They are stepping away from the idealized vision of America they once admired.
This shift isn't rooted in a loss of affection for American cities or culture, but in a deeper erosion of trust. And once trust fades, it becomes incredibly difficult to regain. This situation goes beyond missed flights, lost hotel bookings, or diminished revenue streams. The more fundamental question is whether the United States can still be seen as a welcoming, open place for the world.
The current travel boycott isn't marked by loud protests or angry demonstrations. It is quiet, growing steadily, and widespread.
Wherever you are in the world, staying curious and informed is more important than ever. Because if America fails to recognize and address this shifting sentiment, it risks waking up one day to find that the world has quietly moved on without it.